with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, mona muluwanji, namaste, jumbo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jed Lee, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We are coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so delighted and so very honored that you join us in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to tell all of your family and friends about the show, your kids' teachers, your principal, the librarian, and also please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Stitcher Radio, wherever you find your podcast. Our guest today is Mike Purewal. He is here to celebrate his debut picture book. It's called On Your Way. Before we invite Mike into the studio, we want to let you know that this episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast is brought to you by Skipper, Friend or Foe, a distracting mystery within life's traumatic events. A really powerful middle grade novel written by Kelly Sanchez. It is a Reading with Your Kids certified great read. Michael is leading what seems to be a pretty normal life for a happy 12-year-old boy. And then the unthinkable happens. His mom gets cancer. Michael's dad has to take a job out of town because the treatments are so expensive. It's the only way the family can afford her care. Suddenly, Michael is no longer a carefree kid. He's now his mom's caretaker. When a new friend convinces Michael to follow a mysterious adventure, Michael learns that it's not all up to him to take care of his mom. It's okay to have fun even through some of life's toughest issues. Really is a powerful book. Get your copy today. Skipper, Friend or Foe, a distracting mystery within life's traumatic events by Kelly Sanchez. This episode of the podcast is also brought to you by Simple Words Decodable Chapter Books. From a very early age, Cheatham Knievel's son had a passion for books. Unfortunately, reading did not come naturally to him. In 2015, at the age of 6, he was diagnosed with dyslexia. With training, he soon began reading simple words and sentences. One night, he picked up Hop on Pop by Dr. Seuss. He read the entire 160 words over and over, and then he asked for a chapter book. Cheatham Googled, talked to experts, teachers, tutors, and parents in an effort to find low-level, high-interest books. She knew other parents were in search of the same books too. She simply couldn't find them. So she began to write them for her son, and he began to read. And with that, Project Simple Words was born. We believe the right book gives kids with dyslexia the opportunity to experience a love of reading and enjoy a chapter book without the tears. You can learn more today by going to simplewordsbooks.com. Join us right now from right outside the beautiful city of Toronto in Ontario, Canada. Our guest is here today to celebrate his debut picture book. It's called On Your Way. Please welcome to the show, Mike Purewal. Hey, Mike, how are you?
I'm doing great, Jed. Thank you so much for having me. This is awesome.
I'm delighted to have you. Love having friends from Canada on the show. Canada is such an amazing country, and Toronto is a really spectacular place. It's one of the most diverse places that I've ever visited.
Absolutely. We call it like a cultural melting pot up here. I mean, there's every ethnicity, there's every type of food you can desire. I mean, it's just a great, great city to live in. A little cold, but you guys in Boston are used to that. So
it is cold. Absolutely. It is cold. Do you guys get the lake effect snow that the people in Buffalo get?
we don't get it as bad as Buffalo. I think over the past weekend, I think you saw the snowstorm that they had there. We didn't get any snow this past weekend. So.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, I was caught in one of those lake effect storms, and it's like just like, where did all this come from?
It's mind blowing. Yeah,
it really is. It really is. Hey, speaking of mind blowing, On Your Way seems like a pretty fun, mind blowing children's book.
Yeah, it's an awesome book. It's it's one. I'll get into what the story is about, but a really cool thing about the book is my daughter is actually illustrated as the main character throughout the book. So it was a really amazing experience. I mean, at the onset of production, I would send pictures of my daughter to my illustrator, And then, as illustrations came back and different revisions came back, we would sit down. It was like this really cool bonding moment and experience where, she'd kind of provide her input and she'd actually see the story come to life with her in it. So that was a really special moment for us, for sure.
Yeah.
Just,
that bonding, that's why I launched the Reading with Your Kids podcast, because I realized that there are a lot of benefits to reading with your kids. Obviously, kids
absolutely
learn how to read. I didn't realize how many other benefits there were. The kids become more empathetic, that eventually kids who are being read to 20 minutes a day, every day, there's all sorts of studies showing they end up making more money and they're happier. But the reason I launched the podcast is that I know that the relationship I have now with my adult kids, and it's a great relationship, it started with books. It started with them on our laps reading books together. And it's such an important part of family. It's such an important part of our family.
I 100% agree. And I think On Your Way is just one of those stories. I mean, I try to create it not only for obviously children to love it, but also parents as well. I figure it's one of those books where parents and kids will read it over multiple times. There's so many different things happening within the illustrations that, new findings will be found. And, the book itself is it's a rhythmic story. It's about, the adventure this little girl who's depicted as my daughter goes on. Essentially, she leaves planet Earth because she's frustrated by, too much pollution, the magical rainbow tree getting chopped down. So she goes up into her spaceship. She has this big, amazing party with the stars playing all different instruments from all around the world. She goes to, a scary planet where she runs out of gas and she has to, overcome that challenge. And then she lands back into the universe, back down to the center of the earth where the powers of the universe, kind of help her fix her ship. And she arrives back home, being this wiser person who overcomes a lot of fears and challenges. And she has a pretty awesome time doing it.
What a great adventure. That sounds like so much fun.
Yeah, it was really cool to put together. And, I want kids to, feel happy and feel adventurous and feel brave. I'm a big proponent of, children's mental health and well-being. So there's a lot of lessons, very subtly I try to put in the story. It's all about, overcoming your fear, overcoming your worry, overcoming your anger. And at the end, the child, the hero at the end, overcomes those and she accomplishes this incredible adventure.
Yeah. I think that that's something that we don't, as parents, we don't think about that much. Or we don't think about enough. The idea that, school is important and talking to our kids are important, but allowing our kids to go on adventures, that's how they really learn and really grow. As I look back over the almost 100 years of my life, I know the lessons that mean the most to me are lessons that I learned on adventures.
Exactly. Absolutely. And, at the onset of the book, before she goes on this adventure, I'm also encouraging children to put down, the media, the technology, to get off the iPads, to put the turn off the TVs. So that's another theme throughout the book as well. In order to be able to go on these adventures, you got to drop the iPads and the TV. I mean, I think as a parent now, my daughter's now 8, but, we struggle with this, how do you get your kids off these devices? It's become a big issue, obviously exacerbated by the pandemic. Children are just on their devices so much more nowadays. And to your point, just how do you get them out and about and onto these adventures? That's where the biggest life learnings happen.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the ways, and we need to remember this, and I need to remind myself as much as anybody else, the best way to get our kids off their devices is to let them see us shut off our devices.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can't be sitting there going, okay, get off your phone. Wait a minute, I got to text this person here. I told you, get off your phone.
We have this rule in our household where basically, for dinner time for sure, we have certain times during the day where we can check, especially like my wife and I, where we can check our phones. Like dinner times and absolutely no, we put our phones away, which I think is a great habit for any families. And, if you just kind of set boundaries around, your tech, I think that obviously helps your mental health as well. So in our household, we're allowed to look at our phones from certain times, unless it's something urgent, and definitely meal times, and hopefully mostly on weekends too. We're not on our devices.
Yeah. Yeah. So important. Hey, one of the things I ask authors is, did you always dream about being a children's author? And I know from your bio that probably wasn't the case. You had other aspirations. In fact, you were on a completely different trajectory. You had this career as a CEO that so many people dream of, and you said, no, time for me to step away. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. It was an interesting journey. So I wasn't a CEO per se. Like I've spent 20 years in corporate. I was a vice president of sales and marketing for a food company. And, I really just burnt out. And this was right in the midst of the pandemic. I just kind of like hit rock bottom, at least what I felt rock bottom. And, I came to this realization that I'm not really making much of an impact. So I kind of wanted to pivot from what I was doing. Obviously, it took a couple of years planning. It wasn't something that just happens overnight. You got to plan it. You got to have the support, obviously, of your partner, which I had great support for. But yeah, there's a point where, I just wanted to try doing something different. I wanted to try living up my passions. And one of my passions have been, I've always wanted to write. I didn't know what form that came through. But when I had some time off during the pandemic, when I left corporate, I would be reading a lot of books with my daughter. As you said earlier, it's such a great bonding experience between parent and child. And we were actually reading some Dr. Seuss books because she really loved those books at the time. And we loved Oh, the Places You'll Go. And I just thought, why don't I try writing a book like Oh, the Places You'll Go? So after I left my 20-year corporate career, I naturally gravitated towards writing and, kind of grinded out, a book because I had no credibility in this industry, right? So to find a publisher and to do all that stuff is obviously very challenging. But, I was lucky and fortunate enough to find one who believed in the story. And I got matched up with a great illustrator. And now I'm on this different path of writing children's books. And I got to say, I'm pretty happy doing it. Not to say there are a lot of aspects that I miss from the corporate world. But I'm definitely happier on this path for sure.
One of the things that we love to emphasize and remind authors and aspiring authors is that when they choose to write a children's book or a novel, and anybody in the arts, when they choose to become a performer, a visual artist, whatever it may be, they're launching their own small business. We hear this term of people soft retiring. I'm not saying it right, but they're kind of like, yeah, the pandemic, I really dug not having to go to work. So I'm just going to chill out and I'm going to be creative, and that's going to be a lot easier for me. Not really.
No.
You don't realize that there's a lot of work. It's very rewarding, but there's a lot of work going on when you become a children's author or an artist of any type.
Absolutely. I mean, the grind continues, right? I mean, honestly, like I reached out to over 200 publishers worldwide. I mean, I researched over 200. I sent out my manuscript to 150. For anybody who's listening, who wants to be an author, you're going to get rejected. Like, believe me, you just got to be able to have that tough skin and kind of move through it. And even when you get published, that's just step one of so many. Then you got to, get your book into bookstores. I mean, I've reached out to over 200 independent bookstores. I've reached out to, similar to you, like over 100 people in terms of PR, Instagram influencers, everyone. It's just, you got to continue to get that word out. You got to sell and market your book. And thankfully, there's a lot of skills that were transferable for me from my corporate career to what I'm doing now. So it's helped me a little bit, but, not knowing very many people or not having many contacts, it is challenging, but hey, I'm going to keep on grinding it out, as I've said.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, what was the reaction of your daughter? You were talking about creating this book with your daughter and getting her input. Now that the book is here and it's on bookshelves and she is the star, what's her reaction to it?
Yeah, she absolutely loves it. Like, I remember when the book first came in, like, we opened up the box together. Like, she was so proud. Like, she held this book and like, we sat down at the table and she was reading and she was seeing, the book for the first time in physical form. Obviously, she's seen it on the computer, but in physical form. And the next day, I gifted a book to her classroom and she was so happy. She's like carrying her book all the way to school and she was showing all of her friends in school and she showed it to her teacher. And her teacher was amazing. She's a very sweet lady. And she goes, I'm going to create a lesson plan all around adventure and imagination and creativity. And, we're going to do, based on your book, we're going to get kids to write their own stories based on these lessons. And, coming from the corporate world where a lot of, a lot, you're always searching for profit and, how to grow a business. And I think, in this creative space, it's obviously you're challenged to do that as well, but a lot of it's more about impact, and to have impact on children, and to do something like that is so rewarding for me. And I just hope to make a greater impact with children and with parents alike.
Yeah, I love that idea. What a great teacher and I think that, another thing we talk about here on the podcast is what kind of conversations can a family have when they're experiencing a book together. And I think that a lesson plan is something that would be perfect to sit down and for families to talk about, hey, what kind of adventures do we want to go on? And let's talk about some realistic adventures we can do. And then let's talk about some crazy, wild, just stretch your imagination kind of adventures.
Exactly. And I think that's where the greatest family adventures come from, right? When you have the family input, when you have the kids input, when both parents are like, where do you want to go? What do you want to see? Where do you want to travel to? So absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. So the book is out there. Your daughter loves it. Her class loves it. Teacher loves it. What's next for you in your writing career? Is this a one and done, or is it like, no, this is awesome. I want to do this, even though it's a lot of hard work?
No, absolutely. I mean, I'm definitely not a one and done. I actually have a second book that's going to be published next year. It's called Boban from Zoltan. And I've done a couple of, I'm working on some other manuscripts as well. So, Boban from Zoltan, he's this, kind of like this mystical wizard type character. And this book, I'm trying to, it's on purpose intentionally to be much more funnier, or funny. So it's this wizard kind of teaching kids the art of gratitude, but in a way that, nobody's ever heard. So it's all about how the world works and how our bodies work, but in a way that you've never heard it before, by saying, well, the sun doesn't, do this or that, or, your body doesn't do this or that. And so I'm working on that manuscript. I'm working through the illustrations right now. And, again, mental health is a very, I'm a very big proponent of it. So that book's trying to stress to kids the art of gratitude and what not to always take granted for, like the little miracles in life that we experience every single day.
Yeah. Hey, I wanted to go back. You mentioned mental health is very important to you. You experienced burnout in your professional life. I certainly experienced that coming out of college. I was working in human services and did that for about 10 years and, decided it wasn't something I could continue to pursue. So I became a professional clown.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it really was nice. Two things. First, how did you get the courage? Because you mentioned, it took you a while. It took a couple of years. Same thing with me. It took a few years figuring out how to make a living at this, but it's a big jump from like going from this, hey, I got this secure, boring, making me a little bit crazy job, but it's giving me a regular paycheck, and that's really important to my family, and I'm going to say goodbye to that and do this other thing that's kind of out there and crazy, and there's no guarantee that it's going to be successful.
Super crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. How was so what's great for your mental health? Do something even crazier. So,
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
where did the courage to do that come from?
Yeah, it's interesting because, as I said, like this plan was in the works for 2 to 3 years, and at some point, you just have to kind of pull the trigger. So I'm a very analytical, very pragmatic guy. I'm not the kind of person that's going to be like wake up the next day and say, oh, let's do something absolutely crazy. I mean, I had a lot of Excel spreadsheets, financially how to plan out, because that's the biggest thing, right? When you leave, any job, whether it be corporate or anything, you have that paycheck, you have that stability. And that has been by far the hardest for me. Not becoming more on this creative side, you don't necessarily have that stability in terms of cash flow and, regular income that's coming in. But yeah, my health at the time, it was mental health. I actually had some physical health challenges as well. And, a lot of it was due to burnout, stress related health issues. And, kind of came to the conclusion that, life is just too darn short. And that's kind of the prevailing thought that came into my head, that, I can continue on this path. It will affect my health. I mean, what kind of parent do I want to show up to my daughter? What kind of husband do I want to be to my wife? These were like really big questions. And I just came back to this thought that, life is just too darn short. And so why not try something different? Why not? And, to everybody out there that's listening, it's much, much harder. Right? It's not easy to do. But, there's some tips. As I said, make sure you have a good plan in place financially, practically. Make sure you have the support of your partner. And three, if you're doing if you're starting, something fresh, like, start a side hustle while you're working. And as that side hustle continues to grow, as you continue to get income from your side hustle, it'll make the transition over to that much more easier when it's feasible to do so. But yeah, it's a pretty crazy step. And some days I wake up, I'm like, how the heck did I even get here? But I absolutely love it though. I'm not going to lie to you.
Yeah. And the good thing is that it's a lot more acceptable. There's a lot more people that are willing to support that kind of crazy dream than there was 35 years ago when I made the choice, and
Absolutely.
even, before that. So,
yeah. And you're hearing so much now. Sorry, this is the day of the great resignation, right? There's so many people just like leaving work and, following their passion. So to your point, it's so much more widely open and accepted.
Yeah. Yeah. But before you do that great resignation, make sure you have a plan.
That's the biggest thing. I mean, I've always, between, I guess there's a lot of people listening, but between us, I've always been such a pragmatic person, always knowing, 2 or 3 steps in advance what to do. And this is like the first time in my life where I wake up, I'm like, I don't know what to do. And it's scary in some ways and it's amazing in others. It's very polarizing for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The best piece of advice that I received was from a mentor who now lives in Canada. He sat down with me, and he said, Jedley, you're going into show business. And you have to remember that's 2 words, show and business. And you notice business is the much bigger of the 2 words. And if you don't take care of business, there ain't going to be no show.
Absolutely.
And I think that's the
Great
same
feedback.
Talking book business or art business or music business is you don't take care of business, the art's not going to happen.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and to that point, I mean, that's great sound advice. And, I'm lucky that, my background was sales and marketing. So I'm trying to take care of the business part of it. But yeah, I mean, my book is, available anywhere for sale. I mean, Amazon.com, Barnes and Noble. I mean, it's available in a lot of independent bookstores in the US as well. So right now I'm just trying to generate that awareness. It is really a great story of the feedback that I've gotten. It's a magical, whimsical tale that, parents will love to read with their children. So please do support me and go and buy a copy.
Hey, before we go, I'm wondering, Mike, have you taken the time to sit down? I know you've had all the spreadsheets and you did the creative work and you're making the phone calls, but have you had this chance to sit down and maybe even with your daughter and just think about the fact that now, thanks to your book, thanks to you and your daughter's story, there are thousands of families around the world are going to be bonding together with your story?
Yeah, I guess I don't take enough time to sit in that sort of space, which I think I need to do. But when I hear stories, when I see kids picking up the book and reading it, or I get pictures of, children, or I get, reviews on Amazon telling about the stories, I do take that moment to sit and, reflect, to think, 2 years ago, I hadn't even started writing anything. I mean, just that thought alone is pretty incredible. And, it was a couple of weeks ago, actually, I took out my journal where I actually started writing. And, I was reading my chicken scratch writing and, where, the first words that came, how I kind of planned out the story. And I did take a moment then just to think and just reflect, like, wow, that's incredible. From, putting pen to paper, putting, the ideation stage, creating the plot and the characters, and then, creating the story. And then from there, I thought, okay, so that took a few months. Then from there, researching all those publishers, that took a long time, sending the manuscript out to over 150 publishers, waiting to hear back from them, and then, okay, so then I finally got a contract, thankfully. And then from there, the illustration process and how fun that was, and, the detail that went through. And then, when the book finally got completed, now it's, as you said, the business part of it all, how to market it, how to sell it, how to sell that book. And that's what I'm in the midst of right now. So, I mean, there are times I do, to answer your question, sit back and, take some time to reflect. But I also feel like it's also the go stage, right now that I want to get the awareness and get everything out there. But to your point, I definitely need to sit into that space a little bit more and reflect and appreciate. So thank you very much for bringing that to my attention.
Hey, in the meantime, we need to know what space we can go to find out more about On Your Way and more about you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I created a website. My website is mikepurewal.com. So it's Mike, M-I-K-E, Purewal, P-U-R-E-W-A-L.com, just one L. I'm on Instagram at mike.purewal. And as I said, On Your Way can really be found anywhere, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, any major online sites, it's there.
Awesome. We've had a really great time speaking to the author of On Your Way, the debut picture book from our guest, Mike Purewal. Hey, Mike, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate this. This was an awesome conversation. Thank you.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Zeke McDermott. He'll be here to celebrate Natural World of Wisdom books. Zeke is a young guy. It's a really fascinating conversation. He's a fascinating young guy. You don't want to miss it. That's the next episode of the podcast. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, we're going to start by thanking our guest, Mike Purewal. Please be sure to check out On Your Way. Also want to thank our sponsors, SimpleWordsBooks.com. If you have a child or somebody that you love is struggling with dyslexia, Simple Word Books are a great way to help your child, your loved one, gain some confidence, help them enjoy the love of reading. Really, really want to check it out, SimpleWordBooks.com. Also want to thank Kelly Sanchez. Her powerful middle grade novel, Skipper, Friend or Foe, a distracting mystery within life's traumatic events, can spark lots of fantastic conversations with you and your teens and tweens. It's also a Reading with Your Kids certified great read. I want to thank my team, Fatima Khan, Rory Grady, Skylar Strauss, Mirabella Q, Jordan Staley, Stephanie Davila. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.